Hi, this is Reg Athwal, and welcome to another one of our episodes for Family Business Experts, where I get a chance to interview an expert or entrepreneur who can share a few words of wisdom, give us some insights that can help us not only at a family level, but also at a business level. So I'm joined here by Tariq Qureishy. Welcome to the show, and I'd like to give you a formal introduction here. You can see from our screen, he is a futurist. He's a celebrity speaker. You can see from the pictures there. He's an entrepreneur, media professional, and humanitarian. And I'd like to really tell you a bit more about him, and especially with his fantastic corporate background. Normally you come across, entrepreneurs have been entrepreneurs from a very young age and always grown different businesses. But what I like about Tariq here is he had some time for almost 20 years with Dow Jones. I understand, hopefully we can deep dive into that later, where he built a startup and took it to $100 million a year revenue business and eventually headed up $1 billion business. Outside of that, he's also had a great career as a CEO publisher with the Times and Sunday Times. He's been with Bloomberg Media as a regional leader advisor, and also launched Bloomberg TV in the Middle East and Africa region, expanding that business. So what I refer to people like Tariq as intrapreneurs, being in a corporate environment, but still having that entrepreneurial spirit, building businesses, new business units, growing businesses in a corporate capacity. And then eventually, and we'll hear more about his journey when he decided to become an entrepreneur in his own right, where he's now CEO of multiple companies, including Mad Talks Group, an integrated digital media and visual storytelling platform, focusing on the future of leadership, innovation, and 10x thinking. Also, one of his new ventures, EQX, which is EQxponential, a future readiness enabling platform. Can't wait to find out more about that, which executes transformational methodology concepts to bridge exponential organizations for the future. Outside of this, he's someone who's very much into nonprofit initiatives with his organization called 100% Mad. Initially, when I looked at it, I thought, is he mad? When I looked at some of the pictures from the past, but then I realized, no, it's an acronym. MAD stands for Making a Difference, and it's part of his personal mission for humanity, which we'll find out more on this show. So on that note, Tariq, I'd like to welcome you officially onto the show. Thanks for joining us and taking time out during this partial lockdown here in the UAE.
Yes. It's a perfect time to find us because we're here, we're locked down, we're ready to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many questions to ask you, so I'm going to really kick off immediately. Yes. Before the corporate world, growing up, I always like to find out how our DNA is shaped through childhood. And I'm intrigued to find out, who were your biggest influences as you grew up?
Yeah, I had a very happy childhood. My father, my mother, we lived in a very close family, went to the best school in the country. My parents came from northern India, one from Aligarh, one from Lucknow, and they moved on to Pakistan. I was born in Pakistan. I have since lived in 8 different countries. And as I grew up in some of these countries. My father was in the British Army, and then he moved on from there. So I've had a wonderful family background, very safe, there's a lot of psychological comfort and safety within that. So from that point of view, it was very happy. I think that helped to shape me and get me grounded.
Yes.
While I was doing that, I was a great athlete. I was very good at school and so on. And we nicely sort of moved on.
I've seen some of your pictures. Like, what type of sports were you mainly into?
I was a competitive tennis player, and I was an athlete, and I was doing 100 meters, 200 meters, long jump, triple jump. I was basically a poor version of Usain Bolt. I basically did those things. To me, 1,500 meters was considered really, really long distance, which is something I use as an analogy when I go into later in my life, that I can do a lot of things as a sprint. And now I'm working more and more on what I call a sprintathon. You have lots of sprints to be a marathon, because you cannot, in a marathon is too slow. We have to run sprints one after the other. to be able to live in this world. The biggest change in my life came, the biggest tipping point in my early life came when I went to the UK. I was 19. I had just graduated. I graduated very young. And I wanted to, my parents had to put me in, people like you and I have to be a doctor, accountant, lawyer, engineer, something like that. So I ended up.
It's drummed into us, isn't it? I remember
It's
my
drummed
dad
into us.
say that to me with his Indian accent. You will be a doctor, accountant, or dentist.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I ended up in accountancy for my sins. I passed my first exams, and then for the first time in my life, Reg, I failed. I failed my chartered accountancy exams in the UK. And our upbringing is such that we're not trained for failure. We are, if I didn't get an A or an A plus in my schools, I was in deep trouble. So as long as I was doing fine in school, so success was a given. So when you fail an exam for the very first time in your life, it actually helped. It just really broke me down. And in the sense that I said, oh my God, I'll never get married. My parents won't love me. Society won't accept me. And the self-esteem issues that I had, that's actually when I started losing my hair very early, about 20.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So it's
So, now this is my new look.
Events,
but that's when it actually started. I was 24 years old, and it really affected me. And so but what I did at that point in time, I took it upon myself to sort of say, I am going to fight this thing through. My father had just retired, so I couldn't depend on him financially. I actually was too embarrassed to tell them about my issues. So I had to deal with this whole stuff myself. So I worked in McDonald's in London, in Swiss Cottage, if you know that place, for £2 an hour. But I used to get fed, so I was fine. I worked in a bar. From the background that I came from, I used to literally walk out of my pajamas. I didn't even put them aside. So we were spoiled as kids. And so I worked in a bar. I drove cars for Arab princes and people that were coming in. Bottom line was, I got a dose of life, I got a dose of humility, and I got a dose of learning. And whatever I had learned at university and school could not compare to what I learned in those 18 months of trial and tribulation that I went through.
Can I ask you, Tariq, on with this story, because there's a lot of wisdom here. So for anyone who's facing adversity, has failed, made a big mistake, shy in telling their family what's happened, what would be the tips here? If someone's rock bottom, what's your 1 or 2 tips here, what you should do?
At that point in time, it took me almost 10 years to even talk about this as openly as I did. I used to sort of duck and weave every time this question came up. Oh, you failed as accountancy exam. Oops. So my simple advice now, in retrospect, in hindsight, if I knew what I knew then that I know now, is honestly to really be authentic to your parents and basically go there and say, Mom, Dad, I tried. And this is not my scene. I'm not a bean counter. I can't do it. I could do other things. So please help me. And I think most parents now are becoming more and more aware. So my advice is more to parents rather than the person struggling.
Right.
Is to be able to sort of let people follow their heart and follow their passion, as opposed to just trying to fit into society. So that's advice number 1. Advice number 2 is I have what I call the 5 F's of failure. This is one of the takeaways from today.
Okay.
And that
there's no swearing involved in these F's.
There may be. So there's the 5 F's of failure. The first F is fail fast, fail frequently, fail frugally, failure is not fatal, and always fail forward. Never fail back. Fail and move forward. Fail and move forward. And the 6th F is that failure is a good F word. So that's just a bonus F. But the 5 F's of failure is a guideline that I use in business now. And I think this is a good reference point for a lot of people who are looking at this COVID crisis, looking at the transformation in the world that's taking place. If you're not engaging with failure, you're not engaging with progress. And that is why we need to find a way to completely demystify our failures and the word failure. Just a little story. last year I was lecturing at a Harvard Business School program on emerging leaders, and there were about 80 students there, and they said, so how many pages, how long should a CV, a resume, how long should it be? And so I asked them a rhetorical question, so how long do you think it should be? And they said 1 page. I said, no, 2 pages. And I said, 2 pages? That doesn't make any sense at all. I said, no, 2 pages. So I said, you're all highly qualified, finance, lawyers, business, etc. But to me, now you are a commodity. You're all on the same level, slightly higher level.
Yeah.
I want to see.
And you can outsource your CV to anyone these days.
This is your success CV.
Yeah.
And this side is your failure CV. What did you fail at? What did you screw up at? What did you learn? How did you move forward? What I need in people is courage, resilience, resourcefulness, humility, the ability to stop and restart, and the ability to find ways to move forward. So the failure CV is one of my giveaways for today, is everybody we should be writing their failure CVs and what they learned from it.
How do you develop, Tariq, how do you develop determination, resilience, grit, persistence? I mean, is that something one can develop? Because going back to failing your chartered accountancy, you graduated at Harvard, class of, I think, is it 98?
98, absolutely, yeah.
In economics.
So,
to go from a failure to going, with an Ivy League school and graduating there, I mean, that's a huge turnaround.
It is. And I needed to do that for my own personal sanity and my own personal self-esteem and personal belief. But putting that aside, I think one needs to, failure basically shocked me. And my most successful time of my life was post my failure. The next 10 years of my life, I started as a measly sales assistant and so on in Dow Jones at that time. And when I started, I was earning 2,000 dirhams a month, and I built myself up, and I ended up becoming the region director for the whole Europe, Middle East, Africa region, running $1 billion business in 11 years. But what happened to me there is I worked harder than I've ever worked before. I was I had to rebuild myself from within. And I think what failure taught me was strength, resilience, resourcefulness. So I used to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's 72 hours. Now people said, oh, you've been very lucky. I said, no, I haven't been lucky. I've just been working harder than you, because your 5 years is my 9 years. Right. If you add the number of hours and the number of efforts, I'd worked twice as much as you, and therefore I'm further ahead than you are. So hard work became a very important thing. A lot of it now in the new world of digital world environments, I think we need to be much smarter and much, much more exponential thinking. And that's where I become a futurist, and I'll talk about it.
So can I ask you then, maybe we'll try condense your rich 20+ years of corporate experience maybe in a few minutes, because I really want to get to talking about exponential growth and how family business can also learn from us on how to look at their business models and transform. But before we get there, in summary, with your corporate experience, what were the top 2-3 things that really helped you during that 20-year journey that equipped you or helped you to become a great entrepreneur?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was to get the basics right. In any kind of corporate life or any kind of family business, we need to work on absolutely rock solid basics. And one of the things I learned is that once my basics are okay, it gives me the freedom and it gives me the license to be an entrepreneur. I can't just be flaky and go off and do crazy stuff. I actually need to be able to focus that. So I worked on my basics and got it really, really strong. 2, I built teams, and I learned, to my own sort of complete shock, that we need to be a whole brain team. I remember I was in Turkey, and we were doing extremely well on growth, but not well at all on profit, because I was growth driven. My whole mindset was growth driven, and because that is how I was being incentivized and so on. And so that's when I discovered psychometric testing, because when they started doing the psychometrics on my team, everybody I was hiring in my own image. And I needed to build a whole brain team, so that I found my IT manager, Mal, I remember him to this day. extremely irritating. He was necessary because he was different.
Right.
So item number 2, hire people who irritate you. Hire people who, if they irritate you, you're already getting closer to hiring them because they are going into parts of your brain that you're not comfortable at. So I learned a lot in terms of team building. The third one is I did a lot of visioning. Visioning exercises all the way through. So whenever I received a target, I won all sorts of sales programs and developments and stuff. If I got 100, my target always used to be 200. So when I had a 200 target, I ended up close to 200. Interestingly enough, once the target was quite, I felt slightly perhaps weaker internally somewhere. So I made the target at 150. Guess what? That year I produced 137%, not 200 or 220%. Because I targeted myself low. So what you focus on is what you achieve. That is where energy flows. So if you're focusing on a lower number, you will achieve a lower number, and you start compromising and giving yourself excuses and so on. So building certainty in your mind and your vision, certainty puts me into taking action. When I get action, it validates my position and my belief system, and then I fulfill whatever I'm doing.
Can I ask you, is there a distinction between remaining focused and having that certainty versus an entrepreneur trying to do multiple things? Okay. I've seen this pattern with so many entrepreneurs over the years. You've got your cash cow, you've got a business that's doing well. Yeah. And then from there you decide, okay, I'm going to diversify, move into something else. And off they go. And suddenly there's 10, 15, 20 things. But when you look at the numbers, you realize that why didn't that person just replicate the core business times 10, times 100? They would have been more successful instead of, spinning plates. What's your thoughts on the focus part, certainty versus multiple businesses, distractions? I don't know if that's relevant, but I just wanted to get your opinion.
No, it is relevant. It's relevant, and I think it's a very valid question. I apply what I call the 70-20-10 rule. 70% of my time I actually spend on working on my core, 20% on extensions, and 10% on crazy stuff. Okay. And that's the formula Google uses. And then people thought that, people will just, the 10% of their time, they actually sit on the beach. Do you know that Google Maps and Google Glasses and all of these innovations came in the 10% of the time? Right. A lot of their extensions came in the 20% of the time. The 70% was just their base. So what we need to do is to be able to, as I said, get the 70% in place, and that gives you the freedom. So the discipline that an entrepreneur needs, an entrepreneur is not excited just by growing the same thing again and again. It's over. And as far as I used to be like that. Once I've done that, it's finished. Now I need to, because what motivates me is the next big thing. Got it. Is the next breakthrough. So
what you're saying is hire people that irritate you, 70, 20, 10, make sure it's focus and certainty.
Yeah.
And now, with all those learnings that you had in the corporate, talk us through your entrepreneurial journey, being an entrepreneur and running different businesses. Did it start off with the MAD brand, and how did that sort of come about?
Sure. May I take a step back with your permission? And I think that's an important tipping point here to discuss this. And the first one is that I have reinvented myself and my life at least 4 times. Most people, my parents' generation, your parents' generation, they start in IBM and they end in IBM, and then they get the medal and everything else and the
plaque.
Yeah, and the plaque, absolutely. And then we were doing 3 or 4 jobs. Now it's different. And what I have done is completely reinvented myself. So I failed accountant to successful business development and business technology person running a $1 billion company. Then I ended up going back and becoming an entrepreneur. And in that process, I found the Times and Sunday Times publishing. I remember I was in a golf course and I got a call from my friend in London. He said, he's at News International. He knew me from my Dow Jones days. And he said, can you come to London to meet the editor of the Times? And I said, really? What for? He said, well, it was 2007, late 2006. And I said, what for? And he said, we'd like you to, we want to come into the Middle East. We don't know how to do it. We want a trusted pair of hands. We know you. What are you doing these days? Can you come? So anyway, I did, and I was offered a job to become the publisher, launch CEO of the Times and Sunday Times in the region. And I did it successfully and made it profitable in a couple of years. Even though at that time the whole world was going digital, we still came in physical. Now, my learning there was very interesting, is that, and that's what I would share as an entrepreneur. I didn't know how to be a publisher. I'd never done it in my life before. It was literally, I jumped out of the plane and built my parachute on the way down. So that's the risk-taking part. But it's that internal belief system that I am resourceful, yes. I am determined, I am going to be hardworking, I will not take no for an answer, and will find a way to succeed. Once you've got that belief system within you, you will find a way. And that's what I did. 4 years later, I had an opportunity to join Bloomberg. I'm not a TV producer. I haven't done any of that. And they said, oh, can you do this? I started in a consulting role, an advisory role. And then all I did was use my mind and my thinking and my creativity. And I sort of said, okay, Bloomberg Asia is doing well, and Bloomberg Europe is doing well. But in the Middle East, there's this huge chasm for 2 or 3 hours in the morning, 7 to 10 in the morning.
Can I interrupt you, Tariq, because there's something that's I have to ask. When these companies approached you and you don't have that specific experience,
yeah,
they still approached you for a reason, okay? Was it your charisma? Was it your attitude? Was it because you were visible in the marketplace? There must have been something else that this is the guy. This is the guy we need to go to, even though you haven't done that before.
A bit of all of those, for sure. And I think, and there's a word that I want to share with you. I think one of them, and it's really important for family companies, because that is the pillar on which a foundation on which they build. And that is that it's about trust. Yes. I have built my relationships in business and so on, built around trust. So even though it was 6 years later and I'd left Dow Jones in 1999, I got a call from one of my old colleagues. And I think it's about building trust and credibility and not burning bridges as you move on. I think so that certainly was one. The second thing was that I'm as I said, I very quickly get over my first 70% to get into my 20% zone rapidly. So Bloomberg had hired me in for doing a 70% core business work and consulting. They wanted to create a convention platform here and so on, which I can do. That's the time they saw, by the way, folks, oh, this guy's thinking, his thinking is different. So I was coming in with slightly more creative thought processes. My mind is always open. And you need to have an open mind for things to come in. Otherwise, it just doesn't. The one thing that a lot of people do, and as a mistake, and that's they bank on their expertise, not their thinking. This is careful what I've just said. They bank on their expertise and their knowledge and their depth of their knowledge, which is historical, rather than the way they think and the way they move forward. Quick example of a guy, his name is Vinod Khosla. He's a multi-billion-dollar investor in Silicon Valley. It's a very famous story where in year 2000, he went to McKinsey, Gartner, Forrester and said, oh, this mobile business looks very interesting. Can you give me how much it might grow? And they said 16%. It grew 100%. Then they went back and said, folks, you messed up. How much do you think is going to grow in the next 2 years? They said, oh, it can't grow at the same level, 14%. And the next year was 10%, and then it was down to 8%. It grew 100% every year. Not that McKinsey and all of these people are stupid, but they were focused on their history, on their old trends, on their old thinking. They forgot the fact that this is growing exponentially. And this has now clicked onto the exponential curve, the Moore's law exponential curve. So experts get it wrong regularly.
Well, actually,
especially in this
to add, Tariq, really briefly, there was, on our channel, there's another show thing that I do, mainly because of my love for books, because they're called book videos. So I take books that I love and reread over the years. And one of them recently was Dennis Waitley, Empires of the Mind. And in there, he talks about the difference between experts and people who constantly evolve with their expertise.
Absolutely.
Because
Brilliant.
there's so many people who, I'm an expert in this, but since then have not read any other books, have not educated themselves again, have not learned new things, have, like you said, have not used the mind and intelligence. They're stuck with their past expertise. I thought that was really powerful.
It is indeed. I was watching a webinar recently, and there were lots of professors talking about public policy and growth after COVID. Every single example they were using is 20-year-old example. Folks, the time has changed. The acceleration is different. The world is faster than you think. It's not going to be slow. So we have to think differently. So you take your knowledge, you take your critical thinking, you take your curiosity, and you look for new questions. Ask new questions, intelligent new questions, and then you move forward. And I think
what are your favorite questions when you're with clients and you're advising clients or on stage speaking and dealing with companies to have 10x, 20x, 30x growth? What's your best questions?
One of my favorite questions is that if money or growth or nothing was of any issue at all, what would you go for? If you remove all of your limitations from your mind, what would you like to achieve? And then I ask the purpose question. And to me, when the purpose question opens up, it opens up their hearts. And we need to reach their emotions. So I think that is one of the questions. The second one is we need to find ways to remove any kind of limiting beliefs. So my questions are essentially to eliminate those belief systems that, oh, this can't happen, this won't happen, that can't. No, forget all of that. Let's say, assume everything can happen. Where do we want to go? So that's one question. Another question I would potentially ask them is to forget your history and start projecting into the future and look at what are the kinds of things we can that you would love to do. And so, it goes back to purpose. I think that's probably my strongest question.
So the purpose is about why we're doing it. Yeah. So like when you talk about building an exponential company and going to some of the methodology of, I'm sure, I don't know, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but links into the EXO type model, Singularity University, where they talk about, what is it, the MTP,
massive transformative purpose.
Yeah. So could you talk us through that? Like why these unicorn companies, these people are building billion-dollar companies in record time. What is it about this purpose area? Why is it so important to have this big purpose, this big drive?
The big drive is important because the big issue, for example, take the COVID crisis now. If you don't have a big purpose, you will crumble. But if you have a big purpose in terms of helping humanity or saving the world or providing the world's information or whatever it is, I mean, our company's MTP my first MTP was make a difference, which is MAD. MAD is the acronym, and I'm completely certifiably mad. And then I took it forward.
Where's the certificate?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I took it forward from there. And as we developed this company, the new platform, the exponential platform, I will get back to your point. The new exponential platform, we called it, and that is transforming humanity to make a difference. So effectively, we looked at humanity and everything around that. So why is it important? It's important because it finds some kind of internal juices within you that you don't normally have. In a normal business. So it releases those endorphins, number one. Number two, you've got to be able to have a more substantial goal, because in the meantime, a lot of things will change. I'll share a small story, and this is Unilever. Unilever is a great believer on MTPs. They have over 100 brands. 28 of those brands developed a massive transformative purpose, and they started living with that purpose and through that purpose. It's a large global multi-billion-dollar corporation. Those 28 brands now represent over 80% of the profit and around 70%, 75% of the growth. 28 brands. So same big corporation. So what effectively happens is people have something to look up to. It becomes your North Star.
Mhm.
Whenever you're lost, you look up and you know where you're going. You know where's east, where's west. So I think we need to build our North Star. The other thing which it does is it aligns people.
Mhm.
You hire the people who have those values. And it becomes a very early question in an interview. If people are not aligned, it's just a job. If it's just a job, they'll only do the bare minimum. We need to do much, much more than the bare minimum.
Well,
So,
I can add to that, Tariq, as a case study of
sure.
what we've been through as a firm. So if you take our group company, RTS Global Partners, our strapline is one family, one legacy. You know, our purpose and mission is, you know, the why we're doing it is to support as many families to make sure that their legacies continue from one generation to the next. And as we've hired partners in the firm over the years, the ones who've really succeeded are the ones that share a similar story to myself, where maybe there was some pain in the family business in the past. They experienced that, and therefore they're driven of, you know, why we want to help other families. But people who joined us for maybe just a quick buck, learn from us, take some knowledge, wanted to be in our environment and in our company and feed off our energy are the ones that didn't last. So I think that's really powerful what you're saying, which is how can we hire more people in our organizations that link to our purpose and link to our values as well.
Yeah. And the value system is really important. I mean, I talk a lot. I start my presentations, most of my big speeches on the word trust. That the future is going to be defined by trust. Trust is not just honesty or integrity. There's hard and soft trust. There's ambient trust. Trust is the gap between the unknown and the known, and how you build that in terms of products and relationships. So trust is very. I actually ask the trust question in any interview. What does it mean to you? Another word which you closely alluded to was empathy. Empathy drives all relationships, and the essence of empathy is how to connect and build. So we look for people who demonstrate empathy, and that is another key thing. I was interviewing a very interesting guy, which you'll see in a few weeks. His name is Rob Capello. We are working on the future of listening as a concept. He's a conductor of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in New York. And I said, Rob, when you sort of stand there, I mean, is it just a show? Or are you doing something? He said, you know, I am doing something. It's like a leader, because he said, all the people are behind me, but I can listen to every single one independently. That's what a leader does. That's what a great leader does. And each group has mastery of their space. They're violinists or percussionists or cello players. And he's doing it through listening. He said, listening builds empathy. Listening
Can I ask
builds
you,
connection.
Tariq, is it a coincidence or have you engineered it this way? I mean, I find it fascinating with your brands. You've got the EQX, okay, the EQ, and then in your name, Tariq, you've got the IQ, right?
Yes.
You know, from a branding point of view, it doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Yes, I mean, and that's why my partner, his name is Paul Epping, so that's the E, I'm the Q, and then we use the EQ was essentially, and the future is about that, and it's about all the E words, but all the Q words, which is about quintessential, quality, questioning, and those are the Q words. Yeah, it is a very fortunate coincidence.
Can I ask you when it comes to developing the MAD brand, MAD Group, 100% MAD, and so on, and then evolving now to your new venture? What have been some of the turning points for you? Like entrepreneurship is sometimes like a jigsaw puzzle, where you're constantly trying to evolve and find yourself, and get to a point where you're building a business that absolutely inspires you. You're passionate about it. You're very clear on your purpose. What have been some of the steps there in your journey? The turning points for you that's led to more clarity with what you're doing today.
Sure. May I share a quick story? As you can see, I love sharing stories. It was 1999. I was part of the Dow Jones Group who were building the 21st Century Leaders. I was at Wharton Business School. It was a leadership program. And we had to do what we called a tombstone exercise. So and they asked us a question: if you had, how would you change your life if you were going to die in 7 days? I said, oh God, that's difficult. Then they said, okay, if you live another 50 years, what would you write on your tombstone? One phrase, one word. And that was my epiphany in life, my biggest epiphany in life. Because I sat there and I looked at it and I said, the previous 10 years, all I've been doing is, growth and money and titles and power and more growth and more cities and more countries. I was grow, 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 grow. And that became my mantra. That became my life. Life shouldn't be about growth. And I said, this is silly. I joined the rat race. I may be a slightly good rat, but I'm still in the rat race. Yeah. So my counselor there, she's a lovely lady, Sheila, and she basically guided me through to get closer to and really bring out my value system. And in the end, I wrote my epitaph, and it was about making a difference in the world. And then I, over time, and our brain keeps working away in the background. And that value system is how I started creating things and coming up with my philanthropic ideas and so on. And at my board meeting, one of my board meetings, all our patrons were together on the 100% MAD, and it was interesting. I was very passionate, and Lee Daly, who was the chairman of Saatchi & Saatchi at the time, he was one of our board members, and Lee said to me, he said, this is crazy. Why do you want to give 100% of the money that you get? Because that's what the whole idea of it was: is give away 100%, don't take any percentage, nothing at all, and basically democratize philanthropy and change the game. And then he said he's mad. I said, Lee, can that be our brand? And he said, what do you mean? I said, I want to make a difference. You think I'm mad? Is that the brand? And then he said, you're right. It is the brand. You're mad. That's the brand. Yeah. So it was serendipity.
Very good.
It was just by chance. I didn't go out there and create a brand called MAD. It just worked in and this is the iteration, you peel the onion and you keep peeling it and keep asking the questions and keep believing from within yourself. So this is how I've helped to produce some of these brands and some of these opportunities, and hopefully,
I like that.
Exponential.
Love that story. Yeah. So can I ask you then, maybe I'll put it on the screen, you could talk us through the different brands. I mean, can you tell us about how all these dots are connected and what's happening with all of these different parts of your group of companies now?
Sure. 100% MAD, which is our philanthropic project, was preceded my MAD Talks piece. And that was 3 years before that. And that was created because of this, making a difference, wanting to make a difference. My idea was to create a micro donation, reach 1 billion people, and find a way to help 1 billion people. And I found it very difficult because I didn't want donations, I didn't want money from people, I just wanted sharing and participation. So when I hit a brick wall, I set up MAD Talks to be like TED, but TED for young people, TED for humanity, TED for entrepreneurship, and so on. So that is how that brand was built. And we did okay, not as good as I would have hoped. We were early I think we were probably too early in the podcast revolution. It was 2016 and so on. The exponential is, I've always been a disruptive, innovative, exponential thinker. And to me, the breakthroughs were at Singularity University. I was there. I went back to Boston to my business school, and we were talking, and the word exponential kept on coming again and again. I read Salim Ismail's book called Exponential Organizations. He is now a partner with us. And that is when I met Paul and set up Exponential EQ, which is our base platform and structure. And within that, the rollout for Exponential Talks, we will have an Exponential Academy, we will have all the other things that we do. So the way this journey has been is to basically build, Exponential, the company, is a future foresight and transformation platform. That's what it is. And the way we do that is to help people through coaching and development, through various learning techniques, through events, through webinars, but basically our job is, we are the how company. We help people and build their muscles. We don't come like a McKinsey and tell you what to do and here's a beautiful deck and a big stand. What we show is how to do it, methodologies and stuff. And this is where my practical business experience starts clicking in. I go there as not as a professor or a teacher. I go there as somebody who has built businesses and so on.
Can I ask
you, that's what this future platform
is. First of all, congratulations. I think it's really clear on, if I could use the word, the ecosystem around your purpose and what you're building. And it's exciting. There's some really, really good things there. I remember doing a book video on the exponential organization. So maybe could you share with us, because it's part of your brand,
Sure.
And you mentioned the Singularity University as well now, the partnership you have. What are some of the building blocks outside of having the purpose part to build a 10x, 20x, 30x exponential growth business? What's the steps?
Sure. So Salim, when he wrote his book, Exponential Organization, is one of the bestsellers. It's worth reading. They were working at Singularity, and they were seeing these companies. They were comparing great companies like GE and Citibank and everything on the one side, growing at 10% a year. And then you had Uber and Airbnb and others growing at 100% or 10x. And they said, what are the differences between these two companies? And the family companies tend to fit in the first, and the crazy companies fit into the second group. So it's a very, very valid question that you've asked. So when they did the research of over 500 companies, they came to a conclusion that there are certain attributes that 10x companies have that good, solid companies don't. And it's very important. And they came up with an acronym which is called, so that was one. The second thing is that they said that when we look at the future in an exponential curve, in a digital environment, we need to look at through the lens of abundance, that we can create new things. It's not on incremental growth, that's linear. We have to be exponential growth, which is about abundance. So there were two words that came out. One is called scale. So scale is, and I'll explain exactly what they are, is to deal with the external world. S is staff on demand. If you are a family company and you are not using the philosophy of staff on demand, what that basically means, quick story on that, Procter & Gamble trying to sell Head & Shoulders, and it was going down in the US, and they found out that the placement of the bottle of Head & Shoulders on the shelf was the reason it was going down.
Right.
So they did a workshop with the group, and they put in, they had people who were 70 and above, gave them an iPhone or an iPad, and all they had to do, this little old ladies and gentlemen going in the morning at Walmarts and taking pictures and sending it back. 250,000 people joined up. It cost P&G zero to hire these people. They got community involvement, and profitability in those shops went up by 40%. So this is staff on demand. Normal companies, family companies, are very reticent in hiring people just willy-nilly. They'll hire very, very carefully. Now, to be an exponential company is staff on demand. We need to find ways. Students could be another way to do it. Gig workers could be another way to do it. The second was SCALE. C is community and crowds. How do we use community and crowds? A is algorithms. We are now controlled by algorithms. I say, Siri, get me batteries. What batteries do you think Siri is going to get? Amazon batteries. Amazon has since become the United States' largest producer of batteries. It's not Duracell or Energizer. It's Amazon. Because Siri always orders Amazon batteries. And battery to us is a commodity. Who cares? And then engagement. So this is the external piece. So there are these 5 attributes for external. And then there are 5 attributes for internal. Do you have interfaces? It's called ideas. And how are you putting the social side and the engagement side? So basically, these are 10 attributes, and we teach them all the time. For a company, for a family company to be exponential, they need to, which means future readiness. They need to have 4 or 5 of these, 2 on each side, minimum. Because if you're not, you're going to get left behind.
So will you be running, through your organization, will you be running other events in the future or training programs around this, so we can learn more and
absolutely
support some of
this is part of our core clients? Sure, this is part of our core business. Every single training and development work that we do, there's an integral piece that we can do. We can do it as a workshop. We can do it online. is to explain how these dynamics work. So my partner, Paul, has taken it to the next level, and both he and I have been working on it, is to create a diagnostic. A very simple 20, 30 question diagnostic where are you on this scale? And then we added another diagnostic, which is where are you on leadership, trust, ethics, and sustainability? So the new company, Facebook, for example, is very high on the attributes, but is it high enough on the trust? It isn't. So Facebook has come in with Libra, their cryptocurrency, brilliantly constructed, should succeed, but it won't, because we don't trust Facebook with our money, because we don't trust them with our data. So it is about trust again. Yes, we do.
Can I ask you, Tariq, when it comes to trust, and I'm glad you use that, because with RTS, we have two meanings for it. One is regeneration, transformation, and succession, but it's also our values, which is respect, trust, and service, to serve. So, and trust is right bang in the middle of those two. So what breaks trust? Let's say you've built trust. What are the things that you've seen that breaks trust, and now you lose customers, employees don't want to work for you anymore? Where have you seen things go wrong for companies?
So trust has, you even have a trust barometer. I mean, trust has honesty, integrity, reliability, responsiveness, competence. All of that builds trust. Social trust in a country, we are living in Dubai, the social trust that the Dubai government has built with us is based around some of the belonging, connection, and providing us with food, electricity, supply chain, hospitals, etc. That's trust. You break trust because you break one of these basic tenets. So I overpromise you. It doesn't mean I'm dishonest, but I overpromise and don't deliver. Breaks trust. I say I can do something and I'm not able to. I don't have the competence. It breaks trust. So it's a lot of people think trust is only about transparency and honesty. It's not. It's way, way, way more than that. I mean, a quick story on trust, which I saw yesterday. The whole philosophy of trust has been changing over the last 10 to 15 years. We don't trust institutions anymore. We trust our banks less and trust Amazon more. And a lot of young people just don't trust big institutions. Do we trust United Nations and the World Bank? Not really. I'm serious. And then all of the statistics, nobody trusts Congress, 22%, it's the lowest in the world. So the story was, yesterday, I was listening to Airbnb. Okay. Airbnb had changed the trust equation from trusting organization to trusting people to come and live in your home. So it had changed from institutional trust to individual trust, which is a big shift. And that is the whole philosophy of sharing, a sharing economy. Airbnb, about a month ago, they announced that the hosts, which is one side of the equation, and travelers on the other side, the hosts, they had booked various things and they had committed to various things. Airbnb said, oh, well, we'll pay you from 15th of March to the 15th of May, and everything else is gone. The fundamental basis on which people work with Airbnb is they trust that if they book something, it will follow through, or they will get a refund. Right.
Is that the same with Uber? Like what they have to go through for people to say, they're going to take my credit card details and automatically deduct from my credit card, and security issues with the driver, they have to get past all.
Absolutely. So if right now Uber does something like, oh, well, all the cards that we've got, we're going to be taking the following information and stuff like that, it'll break trust and never come back. Airbnb is staring at an existential threat right now. And that is, if they lose trust from their hosts because Airbnb made an arbitrary decision that they're going to stop refunding based upon a contract that they had with them and build their entire business on trust, it's broken. So family companies, when they build their 100-year legacies, there must be something really strong and deep that it goes through 3-4 generations. 2 generations are easy. 3rd and 4th generations, when cousins and aunts and uncles, and they all get involved, you have to build something much, much more robust and sustainable. Trust is one of them. Empathy is another one. And for you, when you're looking at succession planning and so on, you have a lot of young people coming in and building and coming up with new ideas and saying, Dad, got to change this. We got to go digital. We got to do this. And Dad's saying, like, dude, slow down. this is where I think it's really important to go back to my original starting point of 70-20-10. Have some of your younger people working on the 20 and the 10 piece while stay focused on the 70. So it's like an aircraft carrier. You have the aircraft carrier, the big family group is the aircraft carrier. But the attack jets on top are the ones who can go off and take a new product, a new market, a new structure, a new thought, and they can fail. So the aircraft carrier can lose 5 jets and nothing will happen. The aircraft carrier still goes on. So the way to think for family companies is you are the aircraft carrier, but you've got to have these jets.
Sounds a bit like the coronavirus.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So China was the aircraft, yeah?
China was the aircraft. Yeah, I mean, it's a slightly extended connection, but yeah.
So when it comes to your family and your succession plan, what's your vision of what you're building for the future and your succession plan? What's the game plan? What's the vision?
My game plan is to basically build a sustainable platform, build something that is built on purpose and values. So the making a difference is my core value. You know, when I die on my tombstone, you will see here lies Tariq dead, who touched 1 billion lives and he was completely mad and will make a difference, something like that. So that's the platform. I want to leave behind tools and methodologies of thinking, not stuff. Stuff goes out of fashion and out of date. Thinking doesn't. And that open-mindedness that we need to build is basically what's there. So I say education is dead. Long live learning. Learning how to learn, learning how thinking works, thinking about thinking, which is metacognition, and then how wisdom and all of these soft elements of empathy, trust, compassion, humanity come together. And when these come together, that is the base platform that I would leave to. And that's why most of my work, my philanthropic work, is about building and growing minds, is opening connections and stuff like that, because these young people will produce everything.
Beautifully said.
Just as on a more positive note, I speak about COVID and that after every single major pandemic, there has been a huge recovery. Spanish flu came out with the Roaring 20s. Before that, in the Middle Ages, after the Black Death, they had the Renaissance. After World War II, we had this massive reconstruction in Japan, China, and so on. After 2008-9, all of these companies like Airbnb, Uber, WhatsApp, you know, all of them came one after the other. So a lot of innovation is going to come. Innovation comes from necessity, but it's our thinking. And it's where entrepreneurs come in. Family companies are by definition entrepreneurial. That is who they are. And if they go back to their source, it started from a corner shop, it started from an idea, and then build value and build trust there. Because all our, you know, our ancestors were entrepreneurs. They were fishermen, bakers, you know, whatever they were, they actually were doing business. Corporate life is much, you know, only in the last 150 years.
I love your answer. I love your answer to the question about the thinking part, leaving behind, you know, this platform for thinking. I think that's very powerful. And also the distinction between the learning and the education piece. And you know, the last sort of question I've got for you, and we were speaking about this recently before today's interview, was your thinking around this whole growth of collaborative strategies, collaboration. Could you talk us through your version of that, your opinion on what's going to be happening this year and beyond around collaboration?
One of the things on the scale and ideas thing of future companies was staff on demand, which is collaboration, and crowds and competition, so it's also collaboration. So it's an integral part of our future. So that's the first thing. What I feel is that we need to build global trust platforms. So we need really, and I'm saying we'll make a really big statement here. After the Second World War, we had the Bretton Woods Convention, where they came out with the United Nations Security Council, World Bank, IMF, et cetera, et cetera. They served us for 70, 80 years. It's over for them. We need a new convention like that, a new environment that we need to create. And in this environment, we need to look at planet health. We need to look at governance. The governance is about trust and ethics. Trust, do we trust our AI? What is the ethics behind that? How will robots work? There has to be a whole new structure around learning about this thinking piece that I talk about, and the future of work, because people will be unemployed and people will need to be re-employed and retrained. So I think this is the kind of thing that we need to do. Now, it's tied, the whole thing is tied with the trust network. We need to find a way to trust each other. Now, trust
is that
can be
where collaboration
technology.
comes in? Where the collaborative.
This is exactly where collaboration comes in. Yeah, absolutely. Trust and empathy are the two words that people come in. So the collaboration pieces are that travel won't happen without collaboration and trust. It won't happen. So we need to have that. So 2 planes, both flights coming in, going out, we need to be sure that they are COVID-free. So I feel that the world now become so deeply interconnected, and this COVID crisis has demonstrated to us very clearly how deeply interconnected we are. You know, one thing happened, everything just comes to a standstill. Do you know that there are hundreds and hundreds of ships at sea stuck with oil right now? 160 million barrels of oil are stuck at sea.
Wow.
Because people are not letting them in. The cost of an oil tanker used to be $20,000 a day. Today, it's between $200,000 to $300,000 a day. Just that, because they've run out of storage facility. So the ships are stuck.
Amazing.
This is where we need collaboration. We need to find a way. We need to find something fresh and new. We need leadership. And sadly, at the moment, global leadership is lacking. And I'll end with our female friends within family companies. The countries that have succeeded the most and done the best job in this COVID crisis, from New Zealand, let's say the Ardennes, to Taiwan, Germany, Slovenia, Iceland, all of them are female leaders. They are the best response. Right. They use compassion and empathy with competence to do that. Wow. And I think as we go forward, that collaborative process with collaboration with the community and collaboration with each other. They were all talking to each other. Guess what do women do? They love to talk. They were all engaging and connecting with each other.
Did you hear that? No, that's right. Can I ask you, as a futurist, yes. If we're having doing this interview now on December 31st, 2030, what, with your crystal ball, what predictions would you make now for the next 10 years? And if we interview each other again or have a chat in 10 years' time, look back and you can go, told you so.
Yeah. Okay. 3 months ago, I would have made slightly different ones. So they have been modified to some extent. So in 2030, a lot of non-touch technologies would have exploded, whether it's voice or any other, whether it's, we will be talking, our brains will be talking to each other and we'll be transmitting thoughts. I think that's one huge area of growth. The learning systems are completely and totally and fundamentally going to change. We would probably be now forced to or encouraged to look at other planets more aggressively. So I think interplanetary travel will become, because if suddenly we can't get rid of coronavirus, COVID-19, and we get another couple of these, what the hell do we do? We need to look at the moon, for example. So I think space travel will grow much more. AI will start becoming an integral part of our thinking in terms of movies and so on. So that will change. But one of the things that's going to happen is nothing will change. We'll still go back to our basics. So what will happen is there'll be a lot of this noise going on out there, and we will find our way to building our own humanity, our own family structure, and so on. So I think this isolation has given us an opportunity for retrospection, for reflection, for thought, and for just really just sort of sitting down and coming up with bringing our family and humanity together.
Love it.
And I think that's the real lasting message is stay close to the basics. Things that truly matter are all in there. things that truly matter are generally for free. By the way, by that time, electricity will be free because there'll be enough solar energy, so you don't need.
So I'll see you on the moon then, yeah?
We will probably meet on the moon. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So on that note, just to, once again, share with everyone how they can engage with you. These are the different sites, handles for social media. So I hope you get a chance to visit them. We'll make sure all the details are in the description if you're watching this on YouTube or the other platforms. So go to the description. We'll make sure all the information is there.
And the next slide, which gives my personal contact details, I'm quite happy to share that.
Yeah, and this is, I love the IQ at the end. I think that's brilliant. So Tariq, these are all the personal ones to get hold of you. And, on that note, I really want to thank you for your time. We really appreciate you giving your words of wisdom. I hope our viewers have enjoyed it. And for those of you who've stuck around to the end, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share it, and let other people know about our channel and also about Tariq as well. So stay safe. Thank you. And look forward after lockdown at sometime meeting up for lunch or dinner. And thank you very much.
Absolutely. With a lot of my best wishes to everybody, and just be out there, be hopeful. This world will change. It shall pass. And we will have an amazing 20s. Thank you.
Thanks, Tariq.